Have you ever wondered why, no matter how kind, generous, or genuine you are, some people seem to harbor inexplicable resentment toward you? It's confusing, even painful, to give freely from your heart, and yet feel the cold weight of their dislike. The truth is, hate is rarely about you. It's a reflection of the inner struggles, fears, and insecurities of those who can't match your integrity. When you walk through life with compassion, self-respect, and authenticity, you become a mirror that exposes what others have buried, avoided, or surrendered to survive. Your kindness shines where theirs has dimmed. Your boundaries unsettle where control once ruled. Your peace and growth challenge the comfort zones they cling to. In a world that often rewards manipulation, entitlement, and self-interest, simply being good can feel threatening to some, and their hatred is nothing more than a reaction to their own unresolved battles. Today, we'll uncover the subtle, fascinating, and sometimes uncomfortable reasons why people might resent you, even when you mean them no harm, and why this reveals far more about them than it does about you. 1. Your light exposes what they're avoiding. Your light is not loud, yet it is impossible to ignore. It doesn't accuse, it doesn't announce itself, but it reveals. And for some people, that is unbearable. Kindness is often portrayed as soothing, but in reality, it can be deeply unsettling. When someone is busy hiding from their own guilt, insecurity, or inner contradictions, your integrity becomes an unwanted spotlight. Not because you did anything wrong, but because your presence silently asks questions they've been avoiding for years. You remind them of the promises they broke to themselves, the compassion they traded for convenience, the honesty they buried to fit in, to survive, or to win. Your generosity feels like judgment, not because it judges, but because it contrasts. It exposes the gap between who they are and who they know they could have been. This is why your kindness triggers discomfort instead of gratitude. It disrupts the carefully constructed stories they tell themselves to sleep at night. Rather than face that discomfort, it feels easier to reject the source of the exposure. So they label you too much, fake, or self-righteous. But understand this, they do not hate you. They hate the reflection they see when you walk into the room, one that reminds them of everything they've been avoiding becoming. 1. You break the unwritten rules of survival. You break rules you never agreed to follow. Unwritten rules passed down through pain, silence, and survival. Some people were taught, often brutally, that love is conditional, that affection must be earned through endurance, control, or emotional warfare. To them, suffering became currency, power became protection, manipulation became language. These systems weren't chosen out of cruelty. They were built to survive environments where softness was punished. Then you arrive, giving without strategy, loving without leverage, helping without demanding a debt. Your generosity feels dangerous to them, not because it's false, but because it dismantles the logic they've lived by. If love can exist without suffering, then what was all their pain for? If kindness can be free, then the walls they built suddenly look unnecessary, and that realization is terrifying. Rather than question the system that hardened them, they turn their resistance toward you. Your presence threatens to collapse beliefs that once kept them alive. Unlearning pain requires vulnerability, and vulnerability feels like death to someone who survived by armor. So resentment rises, not because you are naive, but because you are proof that survival doesn't have to cost your soul. And some people would rather protect their scars than imagine a world where they never needed them. 1. Your boundaries confuse those who expect control. Your kindness doesn't come with a leash, and that's what confuses them. You show up with warmth, generosity, and empathy, yet you do not dissolve yourself to keep the peace. You give, but you decide how much. You listen, but you do not surrender your voice. To healthy minds, this is balance. To controlling ones, it is rebellion. Some people only understand generosity when it guarantees access. They respect kindness as long as it can be directed, extracted, or exploited. In their world, giving is a transaction, and obedience is the unspoken fee. So when you refuse to be owned by your own compassion, their expectations collapse. At first, they admire you. Your strength wrapped in softness fascinates them. But the moment they realize you cannot be bent, guilted, or maneuvered, admiration turns cold. Boundaries expose intent. They reveal who wanted connection and who wanted control. Your refusal to submit feels personal to them, even though it isn't. It simply means you know where you end and where others begin. And for those who thrive on dominance, nothing is more unsettling than a kind soul who cannot be conquered. 1. They mistake peace for arrogance. Your peace is quiet, grounded, and self-contained, and that's exactly why it's misunderstood. You don't rush to prove yourself. You don't enter battles that don't align with your spirit. You don't over-explain your choices to earn permission to exist. To you, this is simply inner alignment. To the insecure mind, it looks like arrogance. People who live in constant comparison assume confidence must be loud, performative, or dismissive of others. They cannot comprehend a self-assurance that doesn't need an audience, so they rewrite your calm as superiority. Your silence becomes thinking you're better. Your boundaries become coldness. Your contentment becomes pride. In truth, your peace comes from self-acceptance, not ego. You've stopped outsourcing your worth to opinions that change with moods. You've learned that not every reaction deserves a response, and not every misunderstanding requires correction. But to someone still chasing validation, your detachment feels insulting. It highlights how much energy they spend seeking approval you no longer need. So they project arrogance onto you. Not because you look down on them, but because you no longer look to them for validation. 1. Your growth disrupts their comfort zone. Your growth doesn't announce itself, but it shifts the entire room. You move differently now. You think deeper, choose wiser, and tolerate less. And while evolution is supposed to be celebrated, to some people it feels like an accusation. Your progress quietly asks a question they've been avoiding. Why am I still here while you moved on? You didn't abandon them. You outgrew the version of yourself that made stagnation comfortable. That makes your presence inconvenient. It disrupts old dynamics where you played smaller, stayed silent, or accepted less than you deserved. Instead of adjusting, they protect their comfort by reframing your growth as betrayal. So they say you've changed, as if growth is a flaw. They call you fake because the old access they had no longer exists. They describe you as distant because you no longer orbit their limitations. These labels are easier than confronting the truth, that growth requires effort, accountability, and courage. Hatred becomes their shield, not against you, but against the mirror your evolution holds up. Because if they acknowledge your progress as real, they would have to confront their own resistance to change. And that's far more uncomfortable than resenting you. 1. They benefited from the old you. Some people fell in love with the version of you that was endlessly giving, silently sacrificing, and always available. They didn't necessarily see your true worth. They saw what they could take without consequence. Your generosity, your patience, your tolerance became a resource they relied on, sometimes unconsciously, to fill their own emptiness. Then something changed. You started valuing yourself. You began setting limits, protecting your energy, and refusing to let others dictate your boundaries. The access they once enjoyed vanished. Suddenly, the version of you they depended on no longer existed. What they call hate isn't really about you at all. It's grief disguised as anger. A reaction to the loss of entitlement they never earned in the first place. They resent that you no longer fit into the mold that made them comfortable. They feel rejection, even though the only change was your self-respect. This is the paradox of growth. Those who once thrived on your old patterns may turn hostile, not because of who you've become, but because they miss the version of you that allowed them to take without accountability. Your self-worth becomes the unspoken trigger for their discomfort, and your liberation becomes the lens through which they measure their own loss. 1. Your kindness has no transaction. Your kindness isn't a negotiation. You give without invoices, without hidden clauses, without expecting a return. To you, generosity is a reflection of your values, not a currency for manipulation. But many people operate differently. For them, giving is transactional. Every smile, favor, or gesture carries an unspoken debt. When they encounter someone whose kindness comes freely, without strings, without obligation, it confuses them. Their internal rules are disrupted. How can someone offer without expecting repayment? How can someone care without needing control? The very existence of your generosity challenges the frameworks they've relied on to navigate the world. Confusion quickly turns into suspicion. They start questioning your motives, imagining hidden agendas where none exist. When suspicion fails to justify their discomfort, defensiveness rises. And when all else fails, hostility emerges, an attempt to reclaim control over a reality they cannot manipulate. Your kindness, simple and authentic, becomes a mirror of their transactional thinking. They resist it, not because it harms them, but because it forces them to confront a model of connection they cannot yet embody. In giving freely, you illuminate their scarcity, and for some, that light burns too brightly to endure. 1. You refuse to become what hurt you. You made a quiet, radical choice. You refuse to let pain rewrite your character. In a world that hardens people through betrayal, disappointment, and survival, you stayed soft, not naive, but conscious. You learned discernment without surrendering your compassion. And that choice carries a weight few talk about. For those who were wounded and responded by becoming sharp, guarded, or emotionally distant, your gentleness feels unsettling. Not because it judges them, but because it reminds them of who they were before the world demanded armor. Your empathy becomes a living reminder of the tenderness they had to abandon just to endure. They tell themselves that softness is weakness, that bitterness is realism, that closing off is strength. Then you appear, still kind, still humane, still open, and their narrative cracks. Your existence quietly challenges the belief that survival requires cruelty. So discomfort arises, sometimes resentment, sometimes hostility, because acknowledging your gentleness would mean confronting the grief of losing their own. You are not their enemy. You are their memory, a reflection of the self they buried to survive. And for some, that reminder hurts more than the original wound ever did. Last, the truth is, when people hate you despite your kindness, it is rarely a reflection of your character. It is a reflection of theirs. Your light exposes what they've avoided. Your growth disrupts the safety of their comfort zones. Your boundaries confuse those who demand control. Your peace, your self-respect, your generosity without strings, all of it challenges the narratives they've built to survive. Hatred, suspicion, and resentment often arise not from malice toward you, but from the discomfort of seeing what they themselves have denied, abandoned, or feared to become. This is not a call for bitterness or retaliation. It is an invitation to clarity and freedom. When you understand that their animosity is a mirror of their unresolved inner battles, you stop internalizing it. You no longer shrink, apologize, or dilute your essence to gain acceptance. You continue to give freely, stand firm in your boundaries, nurture your peace, and embrace your growth. In doing so, you illuminate a truth that some will resist, some will misunderstand, and some may never accept. But that does not diminish your light. It only proves its power. Remember, being kind in a hard world is revolutionary. Staying soft when others have hardened is courage. And refusing to become what once hurt you is the ultimate triumph. The hate you encounter is not a measure of your worth. It is proof that your integrity and evolution cannot be ignored.